Emma had always been someone who stayed in the background. She never tried to stand out, never looked for attention, and never wanted anyone to notice her too much. At 22 years old, she worked quietly as a waitress in a fancy restaurant called the Velvet Lounge. It was the kind of place where people wore expensive clothes, spoke in soft voices, and paid more money for one dinner than Emma earned in a week. She didn't belong to their world, but she moved through it every day, serving drinks, smiling politely, and pretending not to hear when the rich guests made rude jokes or talked like she wasn't there. Emma lived in a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city. It wasn't much, but it was all she could afford. The walls were thin, the windows cracked in winter, and sometimes the lights flickered when she turned on the heater. Still, it was quiet. After long days at the restaurant, she would come home, make herself a simple meal, usually just pasta or eggs, and sit in her favorite corner with a notebook full of music sheets. That was her real world. Not the white tablecloths and wine lists, not the shining shoes and laughter of the rich. Her world was music. What most people didn't know about Emma, because she never told them, was that she could play the piano. Not just play. She could play with emotion, with grace, and with something deep in her heart that couldn't be learned from any music school. She had learned from her mother, who used to play in a small church in their neighborhood. Her mother wasn't a professional, but her hands moved over the keys like they had a story to tell. When Emma was a child, she would sit beside her mother on the wooden bench, watching, listening, and slowly learning. When Emma was 11, her mother passed away after a long illness. It broke her heart. After that, everything changed. Her father worked 2 jobs to pay the bills, and there was no longer time or money for music lessons. Emma didn't complain. She grew quiet, did her schoolwork, helped her dad, and kept the music alive in her mind. A few months after her mother's death, her father found an old second-hand keyboard at a garage sale. It was missing some keys. The sound wasn't perfect, and the wires were taped together, but to Emma, it was like finding a treasure. Every night after her homework was done, she practiced on it, sometimes playing until midnight with her headphones on. Years went by. Emma finished school but couldn't afford college. She worked in supermarkets, cleaned houses, and finally got a job as a waitress. It paid better than most, and though the work was tiring and the guests demanding, she kept going. She never talked about herself much at work. Her co-workers were friendly but busy with their own lives. No one ever asked what she loved or what she dreamed about. To them, she was just Emma, the quiet, polite girl who always showed up on time and didn't make trouble. But Emma had a secret. Every Sunday, her only day off, she would take the bus to the old community center downtown. They had a dusty grand piano in a room nobody used anymore. She had discovered it by accident one winter when she was looking for a place to warm up. The piano was old, a little out of tune, but it was beautiful. The first time she touched its keys, tears filled her eyes. From that day on, she came back, every week, asking the staff politely if she could use the room for an hour or 2. They agreed, not really paying attention to the shy girl with the soft voice. She would sit alone in the empty room, close her eyes, and play. She played classical pieces her mother had taught her. She played songs she had learned from YouTube videos. She even made up her own melodies, ones that told stories no one else could hear. In those moments, Emma felt truly alive. It was the only time she felt completely herself. Not a waitress, not a poor girl, not invisible. Just Emma, the girl who loved music. At the restaurant, things were different. She wore a neat black and white uniform, tied her hair back in a bun, and smiled at people who didn't know her name. She moved between tables with a tray in her hand and quiet thoughts in her head. She watched the piano player in the corner of the lounge, wondering what it would feel like to sit there and be heard. Every night she passed by that grand piano, polished and perfect, and felt a tiny ache in her heart. She knew she would never be allowed to play it. That was for professionals, for people who had degrees, names, and money. Not for girls like her. Sometimes, when the restaurant was empty and she was cleaning up, Emma would press one or two keys on the piano. Just a few notes, quick and careful, like a secret whisper. She never stayed long, afraid someone would see and tell her to stop. One night the manager almost caught her and warned her not to touch anything that wasn't part of her job. She nodded, apologized, and didn't try again for a long time. Still, the dream lived inside her. She dreamed of playing in front of a crowd. Not for fame or applause, but to share something real. She imagined her mother in the front row, smiling, proudly. She imagined people listening, really listening, the way she had once listened to her mother. But when morning came, the dream faded into dishes, napkins, and noise. The city didn't care about dreams. It cared about money, speed, and power. And Emma had none of those things. One night, as she was leaving work, a customer bumped into her near the entrance. He didn't even look at her or say sorry. She was holding a tray of glasses and dropped one. It shattered on the floor. The man walked away, laughing with his friends. Emma bent down to clean the mess, her hands shaking. Slightly, one of the new waitresses came over and whispered, "Don't let it get to you. They don't see us. We're just part of the background." Emma didn't reply, but those words stayed with her. They don't see us. She had always known it, but hearing it out loud hurt more than she expected. That night, on the bus ride home, she looked out the window and watched the city lights blur past. She thought about her mother. She thought about the piano. She thought about how sometimes people can walk right past something beautiful and never know it was there. At home, she pulled out her music notebook and wrote down a new melody. It came to her all at once, soft at first, then strong, full of emotion. It had sadness in it, but also hope. She played it on her keyboard until she couldn't keep her eyes open. She didn't know it yet, but life was about to change. One small moment was coming that would pull her out of the background and into the light. And all the years of being invisible, of being unheard, of quietly dreaming in the shadows, would suddenly mean something. For now, though, she slept peacefully, not knowing that the same hands that carried plates and wiped tables would soon leave a room full of rich people completely silent. The Velvet Lounge was known across the city as the most exclusive restaurant. It was a place where only the wealthiest people could afford to dine, where the chandeliers sparkled like stars and the waitstaff moved quietly like shadows. Every table was covered with fine white linen, every glass gleamed perfectly, and every dish was served with precision. Emma had worked here for nearly a year, always trying to blend in, always trying to be invisible. But tonight was different. That evening, the restaurant was buzzing with excitement. It was hosting a private charity dinner, a gathering of the city's richest and most powerful people. They came dressed in their best suits and gowns, speaking softly about art, business, and big money deals. The restaurant had been booked for months, and the staff was prepared for a long, busy night. Emma arrived early, putting on her black and white uniform and tying her hair back neatly. She was nervous but kept it hidden behind her polite smile. She knew her role was simple: serve food and drinks, keep the tables clean, and stay out of the way. But deep down, she wished she could do something more. Something bigger. The charity dinner was important. The money raised would go to support music education programs for children who couldn't afford lessons. Emma thought about this as she wiped down tables. Music was the one thing that kept her going, even though most people here didn't seem to care. In the corner of the restaurant stood a grand piano, polished and shining under the soft lights. The piano player was a well-known professional hired for the night. He was supposed to play while guests arrived, setting the perfect mood. But just hours before the event, a problem arose. The pianist had to cancel suddenly because of a family emergency. The restaurant manager was panicked. The evening couldn't go on without music. The whole atmosphere would be ruined. The guests paid a lot of money, and they expected perfection. Emma was in the kitchen, cleaning dishes, when she overheard the manager talking on the phone. His voice was tense, full of frustration. She didn't want to interrupt, but a strange feeling pushed her forward. She walked up to him quietly and said, "I can play a little." Her voice was soft, almost too soft to hear. The manager looked at her, surprise and doubt clear on his face. "You? You can play the piano?" Emma nodded shyly. "Just a little. I've been playing since I was a kid." The manager laughed, but it wasn't a kind laugh. It was the kind that made Emma's cheeks burn with embarrassment. "You're a waitress, Emma. This is a fancy event. We need a professional." But the pianist was gone. There was no backup plan. The guests would be arriving soon. Time was running out. Emma bit her lip. She wanted to prove herself, but the fear of failing, of embarrassing herself in front of the rich crowd, almost stopped her. Still, she thought of her mother's lessons, of the quiet evenings in the community center, and she found courage. "Please," she said. "Just for a few minutes. I'll do my best." The manager sighed, running a hand through his hair. The other staff watched, whispering. Some shook their heads, some smiled at her. The truth was, no one expected much. Emma was just a waitress. That was all she was supposed to be. Minutes later, Emma was led to the stage by the grand piano. She wore her uniform, the same one she had worn all night: black pants, white shirt, and a simple black vest. The guests had already begun to arrive. She saw their eyes flicker toward her. Some were curious, most were amused. They whispered to each other, not believing the waitress could play. She sat down on the bench, her fingers trembling as they touched the cool ivory keys. The room was silent, but not with respect, more like quiet waiting to see what would happen. Emma took a deep breath. She closed her eyes for a moment and imagined her mother sitting beside her, smiling. She began to play the first notes carefully, unsure of how the crowd would react. At first, the notes were soft and a little shaky, but as the music flowed, Emma's confidence grew. Her fingers moved faster, more sure, telling a story with every chord and melody. She played a classical piece her mother had loved, one she had memorized years ago but had never performed in front of anyone. The rich crowd started to listen. Some stopped their conversations. Some leaned forward, curious despite themselves. The music filled the room, floating through the air like a gentle wind, soft but powerful. At first, there were a few doubtful glances. Who was this girl? Why was she playing? But as the melody unfolded, a strange feeling took over. The laughter stopped, the chatter quieted. The clinking of glasses faded. One by one, the guests turned their full attention to Emma. Her hands moved with surprising skill and grace. She played not just with her fingers, but with her heart. Every note seemed to carry her story, of loss, of hope, of dreams hidden beneath the surface. People who had come to talk about money and status suddenly found themselves caught in a moment of pure emotion. The music was so beautiful and unexpected that it shocked the entire room. No one could believe this was the waitress, the girl who served their meals, sitting there playing a grand piano better than many professionals. They had heard. The famous music producer at the back of the room watched closely. His eyes widened in surprise, then softened with admiration. He could tell Emma was more than just a beginner. She had talent, something rare and real. The piece Emma played was long and difficult, but she never stopped. She poured everything she had into it. The years of practice, the memories of her mother, the hope for a better future. When the last note finally faded, the room stayed silent for a heartbeat, as if no one knew what to do. Then the applause started slowly, quietly, growing louder and louder until the whole room was clapping and cheering. Emma looked up, surprised and overwhelmed. People she had served just minutes before were now standing, applauding her with respect and wonder. The proud smiles on their faces told her that she had done something extraordinary. For a moment she felt like she belonged, not as a waitress, not as a poor girl, but as an artist, a musician, someone who could touch hearts with her gift. The manager came up to her, eyes wide and smiling. "Emma, that was amazing. You saved the night." The guests started to approach her, some with tears in their eyes, some wanting to know more about the girl who played like an angel. That night, Emma's life changed forever. For the first time she was seen, not just as a waitress, but as a person with a dream and a talent that no one could ignore. The video of her performance, secretly recorded by a guest, spread quickly through social media. People everywhere were talking about the waitress who shocked a rich crowd into silence with her piano playing. But despite the sudden attention, Emma stayed humble. She knew this was just the beginning of a new journey. She still had a lot to learn, a long way to go. That night, as she walked home in the cool city air, she smiled quietly to herself. The dream she had held in her heart for so long was no longer just a secret. It was real. When Emma first placed her fingers on the grand piano's keys that evening, she was nervous. The eyes of the rich crowd were on her, and many didn't expect much. They had seen her all night in her waitress uniform, moving silently between tables, serving food and drinks. Now she sat there under the bright spotlight, her hands trembling slightly, ready to play. The moment was intense, and her heart pounded in her chest. At first, the notes came out soft and careful, almost shy. But as she continued, something inside her shifted. The music began to flow freely. It was as if the years she had spent dreaming, alone in the community center practicing on a broken keyboard, were now pouring out through her fingers. She played not just notes, but feelings, memories of her mother, her struggles, and the hope she carried deep inside. The room, filled with rich and powerful people, fell silent. The chatter that had filled the air moments before vanished like mist. The only sound was Emma's piano, filling every corner of the luxurious restaurant with a melody so pure, so moving, that it stopped even the busiest conversations. People stopped what they were doing. They leaned in, their eyes fixed on Emma as her fingers moved gracefully over the keys. The music was beautiful and unexpected. The rich crowd had come to eat, to mingle, to show off their wealth. They had not come expecting to be touched by something so raw and real. But Emma's playing changed everything. The power of her music swept through the room, and suddenly no one cared about money, status, or fancy clothes. For a few precious minutes, all that mattered was the sound coming from the piano. Emma played a classical piece that she had memorized long ago. It was difficult, filled with fast notes, soft passages, and moments of quiet reflection. Each part of the piece told a story. It spoke of loss and love, of pain and healing. Emma's hands flew over the keys, and with every note, she told her own story, one that no one in the room could see, but that they all felt deep inside. Some guests closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others stared in amazement, unable to believe what they were hearing. The man sitting in the back, a famous music producer known for discovering new talent, watched her with wide eyes. He knew talent when he saw it, and Emma had it in abundance. The piece Emma played was long and challenging, but she did not hesitate or stumble. The years of practice, the quiet hours in the community center, and the dreams she had held on to all came together perfectly. She was no longer just a waitress in a black and white uniform. She was an artist, creating something magical in front of a crowd that had never expected her to do so. As the last note faded away, the room stayed quiet for a moment, as if everyone was catching their breath. Then, slowly, the applause began. It started with a few hands clapping softly, then grew louder and louder until the whole restaurant was standing and cheering. Emma looked up, surprised and overwhelmed. She saw smiles on faces that had never looked at her with kindness before. She saw eyes filled with respect and wonder. The applause was not just for the music. It was for the courage it took for Emma to stand up in front of that rich crowd and show them who she really was. It was for the years she had spent hidden away, dreaming of this moment. It was for the beauty she had created from nothing but hope and hard work. The music producer approached her after the performance, his eyes shining with admiration. "You have something special," he said quietly. "Have you ever thought about making music your career?" Emma shook her head, still catching her breath. "I've never had the chance," she said softly. "I didn't think anyone would listen." "People will listen now," he said. "You just have to believe in yourself." Word about Emma's performance spread quickly. A guest had secretly recorded the entire performance on their phone and uploaded it to social media. Within hours, the video went viral. Millions of people watched the waitress play the piano with such skill and emotion that it touched hearts around the world. News outlets picked up the story. Emma was invited to talk shows, music schools, and even recording studios. She received offers to study music formally and to record her own songs. But through it all, Emma remained humble and grounded. She never forgot where she came from or the dreams that had carried her through hard times. The restaurant where she worked became famous for discovering the waitress who stunned the city. People came from all over just to hear her play during her shifts. But Emma still worked part-time as a waitress, wanting to stay connected to the life she knew and the people who had supported her. Despite the sudden attention, Emma continued to practice every day. She knew that talent alone was not enough. She had to work hard to improve, to learn, and to grow as a musician. The years ahead would be filled with challenges and opportunities, and she was ready to face them all. Emma's story inspired many people, especially young girls and boys who dreamed of something more. She became a symbol of hope, showing that, no matter where you come from or what obstacles you face, your dreams can come true if you have the courage to follow them. One of her favorite invitations was to perform at a special event for underprivileged children. There she shared her story and played the piano for an audience that reminded her of herself. She told them, "Never let anyone tell you that you don't belong. Your dreams are real, and you have the power to make them come true." As Emma's fame grew, she made a decision to give back. She started a non-profit organization that provided musical instruments and lessons to children who couldn't afford them. She wanted to make sure that other kids had the same chance she almost lost. Music had saved her life, and she wanted to save others through it. Through her journey, Emma learned that true success wasn't just about applause or money. It was about sharing your gift with the world and inspiring others to believe in themselves. She learned that sometimes the quietest voices have the strongest stories. Emma's life had changed dramatically, but she never forgot the moments when she was invisible, practicing alone in the community center, dreaming quietly in her small apartment. Those moments made her who she was. They gave her strength, humility, and a deep understanding of what it meant to truly connect with people through music. The rich crowd that had once ignored her would never forget the night she played. Not because of her uniform or her job, but because of the music that came from her soul. The silence she created was more powerful than any conversation, more meaningful than any amount of money. And for Emma, that silence was the beginning of everything she had ever hoped for. After the night when Emma's piano performance stunned the wealthy crowd into silence, her life began to change in ways she never imagined. The video of her playing had gone viral, spreading across the city, then the country, and even beyond. People everywhere were talking about the waitress who had shocked a room full of rich guests with her unexpected talent. But for Emma, the journey was only beginning, and with it came both exciting opportunities and new challenges. The next morning, Emma woke up with a strange mix of feelings: excitement, fear, and a deep sense of responsibility. She knew that this moment could change everything, but she also worried about what it would mean for her life. Would she be able to handle the attention? Would she lose the simple life she had known? Most of all, she wondered if she was truly ready to step into the world of music professionally. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls from reporters, music producers, and even people she had never met before. Many wanted to interview her, invite her to perform, or offer her scholarships. Emma felt overwhelmed but grateful. She answered as many calls as she could, but sometimes she needed to take a break and just breathe. At the restaurant, the atmosphere was different. Colleagues congratulated her, and some guests came specifically to hear her play. The owner, who had been skeptical before, now looked at Emma with new respect. He offered to give her time off to pursue music, even suggesting they create a special music night where she could perform regularly. It was a small step but important. Despite all this, Emma kept working her shifts. She loved the feeling of being part of the restaurant family, and she wanted to stay grounded. Serving food and chatting with customers reminded her of where she came from, and she didn't want to forget the people who had supported her in difficult times. Emma's real journey started when she accepted the first invitation to a professional music studio. The famous producer who had noticed her at the charity dinner reached out to her, offering to help her record a demo. Emma was nervous walking into the studio, surrounded by expensive equipment and experienced musicians. She felt like a small fish in a very big pond. But once she sat at the piano, the nerves began to fade. The music was her language, her way of expressing what words could not. The producer and musicians listened carefully as she played, impressed by her natural talent and emotional depth. They encouraged her to try new styles, to experiment, and to grow. Recording the demo was a challenging experience. Emma had to learn how to work with microphones, how to think about her music from a different angle, and how to express herself not just live, but through recordings that people would listen to again and again. Sometimes she struggled, feeling unsure if she was good enough, but each time she played, she grew stronger. As her demo circulated among music agents and labels, Emma was invited to small concerts and open mic nights. These events were very different from the quiet community center or the elegant restaurant. The audiences were diverse, young and old, rich and poor, music lovers from all walks of life. Emma felt at home in these places. She loved the energy, the connection, the feeling that music could bring people together. Her performances became more confident and creative. She started writing her own songs, sharing stories from her life. The struggles, the hopes, and the dreams that had shaped her. People listened and they related. Her voice was clear and honest, touching hearts wherever she went. But success was not without its difficulties. Emma faced doubts and challenges. Some people told her she should stay in her place, that a waitress didn't belong on stage. Others doubted her talent, calling her a lucky accident or a one-time wonder. These words hurt, but Emma used them as fuel. She knew that real success came from perseverance and believing in herself. Her family was her biggest support. Her mother, who had first taught her to play the piano, was proud but worried. She reminded Emma to stay humble and true to herself. Her friends cheered her on, celebrating every step of her journey. Emma knew she could not have come this far without them. One of the hardest parts was balancing her new music career with the responsibilities she still had. She wanted to help her family financially, but music didn't bring in money right away. Some days were long and tiring, filled with rehearsals, performances, and waiting for opportunities. She sometimes wondered if she had made the right choice, yet every time Emma sat down at the piano, everything felt clear again. Music was her home, her refuge, and her hope. She remembered the look of surprise and respect on the faces of the rich crowd that night, and she wanted to inspire others just like that. Emma's story began to attract attention from charitable organizations and community leaders. They saw her as a symbol of hope and determination. She was invited to speak at schools and events, sharing her journey with young people who dreamed of something bigger. Emma told them about the power of hard work, passion, and never giving up. Through these events, Emma realized that her music was not just about fame or success, it was about connection, bringing people together, breaking down barriers, and giving a voice to those who often felt invisible. She wanted her music to be a bridge between different worlds, just like she had lived between them. As Emma's career grew, she never forgot the community center where she had learned to play. She returned often to teach piano lessons and mentor young musicians. She believed that talent was everywhere, but opportunity was rare. Her goal was to make sure that more children had the chance to find their voices through music. Emma's life had become a beautiful balance of giving and growing. She recorded her first album, a collection of songs that told her story in a way that was both personal and universal. The album received praise from critics and fans alike, opening new doors and reaching audiences worldwide. The rich crowd that had once been her audience was no longer just a place of nervousness and doubt. Now, it was a reminder of how far she had come. Emma had shown that talent and courage could break through any barrier, no matter how big. Her journey was far from over. There were still challenges ahead, long nights, tough decisions, and moments of self-doubt. But Emma faced them all with the same spirit that had carried her through the quiet nights at the community center and the surprising moment at the Velvet Lounge. Her story was proof that dreams could come true, but only if you had the strength to chase them. Emma had become more than just a waitress who played the piano. She had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and the incredible power of music. And as she continued to play, to teach, and to inspire, Emma knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. Emma's life had changed completely since that unforgettable night when she played the piano at the Velvet Lounge. The story of the waitress who shocked a rich crowd into silence had touched hearts all over the world. But this was not just a story of sudden fame. It was a story of hard work, courage, and a deep love for music that continued to grow every day. After months of growing attention and new opportunities, Emma found herself standing at the edge of a new chapter. She had been invited to perform at a famous music festival, one where some of the greatest musicians in the world came to share their art. This was the chance she had always dreamed of, but it also brought a mix of excitement and fear. The festival was held in a large, beautiful park filled with thousands of people. The stage was huge, with bright lights and powerful speakers. Backstage, Emma could hear the buzz of other performers preparing for their sets. She felt small and nervous. She wondered if she was ready to stand beside such talent, to show the world who she really was. Emma's journey to this moment had not been easy. She remembered the long nights practicing alone, the times she doubted herself, the struggles of working in a job that didn't reflect her dreams. But she also remembered the love and support of her family, the encouragement of new friends, and the power of music to change her life. When it was finally her turn to perform, Emma walked on stage wearing a simple dress, her heart beating fast. She sat down at the grand piano, the same instrument that had changed everything for her. As she touched the keys, the crowd grew quiet, waiting to hear the music that had made her famous. Emma began to play, her fingers moving smoothly and confidently. The notes filled the air, carrying the emotions she had kept inside for so long. Hope, joy, sadness, and dreams. The audience listened in silence, captivated by the beauty and honesty of her performance. As she played, Emma felt a connection with the crowd, a feeling she had never experienced before. The music was no longer just her own story. It was a shared moment of understanding and feeling. People from all walks of life were united by the sound, by the power of her gift. The performance ended with thunderous applause. Emma stood and smiled, tears of happiness shining in her eyes. She had done it. She had faced her fears and shown the world her true self. After the festival, Emma's life continued to grow in exciting ways. She signed a contract with a well-known music label, giving her the chance to record more music and reach even bigger audiences. But even with all the success, Emma stayed true to her roots. She never forgot the community center where she had first learned to play, the restaurant where she worked as a waitress, or the simple dreams that had brought her this far. Emma used her new fame to help others, creating programs to bring music education to children in need. Her nonprofit organization grew, and Emma traveled to different cities and countries, sharing her story and teaching music to those who might never have the chance otherwise. She believed that music was a language everyone could understand, a way to bring hope and joy into people's lives. Emma also became a role model for young women everywhere. She spoke openly about the challenges she faced as a woman pursuing a dream in a world that sometimes seemed to say, "You don't belong here." Her courage inspired others to believe in themselves and to follow their own paths, no matter the obstacles. Her personal life blossomed too. Emma found close friends who supported her and understood her journey. She reconnected with her family, who were proud and happy to see her succeed. Despite the busy schedule, she made time for the simple joys, quiet evenings at home, walks in the park, and moments of reflection at the piano. Emma's music evolved over time. She experimented with different styles, blending classical with modern sounds and writing songs that spoke about life, love, and hope. Her albums were praised not just for their beauty, but for their honesty and heart. Her concerts became events where people didn't just listen, they felt. Emma had the rare gift of making music that touched the soul. She was no longer just the waitress who surprised a rich crowd. She was a true artist, a beacon of light in a world that sometimes felt dark. Through it all, Emma remained humble and grateful. She remembered the early days when she thought her dreams were impossible. She knew that her journey was proof that, with courage, passion, and hard work, anything was possible. Her story continued to inspire countless people. From small towns to big cities, young and old, everyone found hope in Emma's music and her life. She had become more than a musician. She was a symbol of what it meant to believe in yourself and to never give up. Emma's future was full of possibilities. She dreamed of writing a book about her life, creating a music school, and continuing to make a difference in the world. She knew there would be challenges ahead, but she was ready. Because Emma's story was not just about music or fame, it was about the power of dreams, the strength of the human spirit, and the magic that happens when you dare to be yourself. And as Emma sat at her piano, playing a new song that told the story of her journey, she smiled, knowing that this was only the beginning of a beautiful adventure.